Hello, and welcome to the Alchemists Inkwell.
This is your spiritual podcast for grounded people.
I'm Emily.
I'm KristaLyn. I really do love saying that. I don't know why.
I know, right?
I'm just like, oh, this is happy time. We get to be talking to the people who are listening, and I love you guys. It's
Right?
good.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. It's so fun. Yeah. This episode is kind of one of our unstructured ones. We're just going to kind of talk about some of the stuff that's coming up. It's a bookend episode. We're currently like in the throes of preparing for Greece. Like when you hear this, we're going to be not in the country. So that's I think that's a big part of like why we're like, oh, we're just gonna kind of throw this together and like let it flow this time. Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Especially the first half of June is probably it is the busier half when I look at the different transits and things that are going on.
Yeah.
And the transits it's not like throughout the whole month you have like the somebody trying somebody square, sextile, whatever, somebody. But when we look at things that's like, oh, we're going to notice maybe a little bit more when a planet moves or does something, we're looking at retrograde stations. So when a planet either starts moving backwards or stops moving backwards, and ingresses, or when a planet goes from one sign into another sign. We have a couple of those in June, which is totally appropriate because it's Gemini season anyway, at least for the first half. And these things do happen before Cancer season rolls in. So it's kind of like Gemini just being like, oh, but let me tell you another thing. And it feels really
It doesn't happen.
No, you wouldn't know at all, would you? Also, we have Emily's birthday, which is very important in June.
Incredibly important.
So we do kick it off on the 3rd of June with a full moon in Sagittarius, which places the sun in Gemini. Directly opposite of that would be the moon in Sagittarius. I had such a good time today. I filmed for my YouTube channel, like kind of explaining full moons, what to do with them in the context of this one, especially. So if you want to like see the astrology and how to actually understand what the sky looks like compared to the chart, that'll be fun. But basically what we're getting is Sagittarius being creative, expansive, a thinker, like a broad thinker. So we're thinking philosophy here, spirituality, religion, politics, those things that you think about and then they inform your course of action because they become your code of ethics in a sense. Those kinds of things are going to be kind of on the docket for this. And what makes that different from every other year when the moon is full in Sagittarius in the beginning of June, as it does, is that with this, we're going to have Mercury, who rules Gemini, so connected to the sun in this way, will be conjunct Uranus. And that will perfect the very next day. So they are within a degree-ish of each other during that full moon. And so we're going to have a little bit of that flavoring in there because they're also in the same sign right now as Jupiter. So in an ancient context, we would actually consider them conjunct. We could at least say that they're co-present. They are in the same space doing things together. Uranus and Mercury are whispering something to each other, but Jupiter is nearby and you can tell. So I imagine that Jupiter being the ruler of the lunation, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and being in Taurus and being the grand benefic, hopefully the surprising, changeable, things that happen with a Uranus conjunction with Mercury will be beneficial, specifically to Taurian themes of resources and finances and livelihood, that kind of thing, probably on a scale of noticing it in the headlines. Uranus is a transpersonal planet. So Uranus has been working through Taurus and changing our culture and the way we work since about 2018. Jupiter has been in Taurus for a couple of weeks now, and is considered a social planet because he's going to hang out for like a year. So he'll be there for a while. He's working on things. Mercury is, especially now, really picking up speed. By this point, Mercury is out of their post shadow from retrograde. So they are picking up speed. They are super fast as far as planets go. Like the fastest one that we perceive is the moon because she goes around every day. But then it's Mercury. So that's how fast you can think of as Mercury. Mercury with wings on their feet kind of thing. Saying that because we are going to be in Greece where we're going to be learning about Mercurial Hermes, which is nice. So thinking about what surprising new information might we have, it's sort of like if you think about Uranus as the awakener, you can have a stroke of genius with this. Suddenly something clicks into place. It makes sense. I know what I have to tangibly do in order to surround myself with the appropriate resources to accomplish this goal. I know what I have to do I understand the why I need to do something. And suddenly that makes everything clear. So you may have some revelations that day, not even necessarily of a more spiritual side, but something may happen where it helps you click into place. Yes, this is important to me. I firmly believe this, and I know why enough to be more beyond question. And, considering that you can still continue research, but you stand on something, where you stand, so you don't fall for things. To lightly quote Hamilton.
It's
How are you
interesting
feeling
because
when
when I've been looking at this full moon, and like what I've been telling people is it is the full moon of like releasing the blocks you don't understand, like
Mhm.
releasing the limiting beliefs you don't know what they are, but you know that they're there and they're blocking you, which tracks completely with the whole like deep thought and
Yeah, well, and the
philosophy
Uranus
and yeah.
breakthroughs. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So it's so interesting to be like, you're like, oh yeah, it goes exact the next day. I'm like, I bet it does, because we all just released all of this energy of stuff we don't know that's been holding us back. And what I have genuinely been suggesting, which I do weekly forecasts via email. If you want like more in depth on like weekly forecasts, like by all means sign up for my emailing list, and I just send that one email a week. So you have that. But what I have been recommending is like, even if you don't know what the heck is blocking you, like look at a couple areas of your life where you feel blocked, or at least where you feel like there's resistance or like there's lack of movement. And you can't figure out what the fuck those things are, but if you're just sitting in that space and you're like, oh, it's in this or in that, and then come up with an image for each of those block areas, like whether that image is like a furry little monster guy, or if it's just a brick wall, or it's a flame, whatever feels good, it doesn't really matter. And you can either just visualize that image, or you can like draw it on a sticky note, or you can print it out, like whatever feels nice. And then just push all that energy, all that frustrated energy you're feeling about the block and what you feel like the block is, like at the image. Like you can Care Bear it out of your chest and just be like, like you have this image, which if you're watching the YouTube, I just did a very interesting motion to go with that one. But anyway, and then you can destroy that in some way, whether if you're visualizing the image, you can poof it into sparkles, or if it's on like a sticky note, you can burn it or rip it up or bury it in the backyard or whatever feels nice. But that will that's that, like, if you want an active release of those blocks, that is a really easy way to actively release things that you don't know what the fuck they are, but you know that they're driving you crazy.
Yeah. And thinking about it again, you're probably going to feel it in sort of an aloof way. Because again, this is Sagittarius, and it's the moon in Sagittarius. My husband has this natally. And so there will be feelings and thought about the feelings. Yeah, it's a full moon. So there will be.
Weston is a full moon, but it's in Gemini. That's why I'm laughing.
Oh, so they're flipped. That's funny.
And Weston's a Sagittarius and Dan is a Gemini, which I just think is really funny. Anyway.
Yeah, that's going to be funny in Greece too. We'll see how it goes during the full moon on their axis. Yeah. So it's like, I'm not really sure that I need to get upset about this because it's Jupiterian, right? Maybe I don't need to get upset, but isn't that interesting? I think I have feelings about that. Let me mull them over a little bit, which is a key word that my husband has used our entire time. And me, like with my Scorpio moon and Taurus sun, I'm just like, mull what over? Make a decision. You should know this by now. So it was definitely a point of growth for us. And it taught me to mull more and like stew on things a little bit and let them simmer. And I like to imagine that when it's necessary for decisiveness, I can help with that on that side.
Yeah. I'm a muller. I mull things until I'm like, nope, now I'm doing it, and then I do it. But like, it's not a lot of mulling, but there's some mulling that occurs.
It needs to cook, and then when it's ready, it goes.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. It's our first full moon since eclipse season, so like take some time to just acknowledge that too. If there's stuff that came up during eclipse season, if there's stuff that came up during Mercury retrograde, see if you want to release that, or at least just like show some gratitude for those things that showed you those things, if that makes sense. Show some gratitude towards eclipse season or towards Mercury retrograde for showing you those ahas or those big lightning strikes or however it showed up for you. And that just will help. Also, it is a good moon to do things like cleanse crystals and moon water, that sort of thing.
We're back in
your house,
that kind of stuff. That's practice.
Yeah. I would say with cleansing your house, for some reason, I was looking at this moon because I'm feeling like I want to cleanse my house. Of course, I'm not going to be here on the moon, but I was like, what do I want to do beforehand? Because, my mother-in-law is going to come stay here and I want it to feel like cleansed and nice. And I was like, oh, what type of cleansing should I do? Apparently I just need to like yell and sing at things or like smash pots and pans together. It's like that type of cleansing that we're at. So if you're feeling that kind of drive, or even ringing bells or something like that, to do more of like a sound cleansing thing instead of like a smoke cleansing or even like a water cleansing, or it makes sense for some reason. It's like it's Gemini season, be loud kind of energy that comes in. But it would be a good moon to do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, we're talking about Gemini season. Gemini is of the air. Sound goes through the air. But also you have if you're working with the full moon specifically, Gemini is incorporated into that because it's of the air. But we have Sagittarius of fire, and that's not always necessarily like burn everything. You can burn incense and things and it'll totally work. And in fact, that is a combination of air and fire and things. But one of the things that's coming to my mind, especially when we talk about spirituality and philosophy, is fire letters and the fact that words have power. And so the fire of creation or purging that can come with carefully chosen words or sounds that are combined into one. That's the whole backstory of Brahmarai, is words have power. And it's one of the reasons I like it, because words, right? And it's very interesting to be able to consider words as fire.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I appreciate that.
Or sound as fire.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. And I just, how the financial thing kind of plays out, like on Sunday, Monday, will be very interesting to see whatever comes up with that. And this Uranus connection.
Yeah. Well, I remember saying to the group that's going to Greece with us, we're going to be on a ferry the day on the water, the day that the perfection happens between Uranus and Mercury. So I was like, if you have medication for seasickness, maybe bring it. Uranus could bring choppy waters to our transit. So we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually went and bought, I don't get seasick, but I bought a bunch of seasick medication just in case, not just for me, but for like anyone on the trip. I'm like, I'll just have it just in case someone needs it while we're on this adventure. Because the ferry is very unlike, I was looking up what the ferry is like. It's very unlike any other ferry that I've been on before, it's very much like a plane on water with like indoor seats and that kind of deal, which is kind of interesting, which is a recipe for seasickness if you are seasick. So it will be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I was on a trip when I was 17. I was on a student ambassador trip to the UK, and we took a ferry from Wales, or from Ireland to Wales and back. And I, fortunately, at the time, who knows, I've definitely changed as a person since then. So maybe age will have something to say about that. But at the time, I was like the only one who wasn't seasick. And it was a very broad, wide, like it was almost like an office building on the water is what it felt more like. And even still, though, you're going to feel differences. It's a really great opportunity if you aren't someone who gets seasick to have a nap. When I went on a cruise, my favorite part about it was how well I slept because it was like rocking you the whole time.
Fair enough. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. And of course, when we get back from Greece, we will tell you all about it and all the things that happened. So we will do a whole like recap episode on that. And it is just an ancient wisdom retreat that we're doing. So we're going to keep hosting these. Obviously, if you're a longtime listener, you've heard like we're doing Egypt, and the Egypt trip sold out really fast, but we're planning more trips. So there is more coming up. We do still have, if you want to come with us and channel and ride across Ireland, we opened up one spot there, and there might be more that we can get in there too. So if you'd like to join us there, the last date to book is the 13th or 15th
of June.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the last day to book. After that, the trip is closed and you cannot come. We're going to do a lot of really cool stuff on that trip though. So if you want to focus on some just writing time, if you want information about like the publishing industry, we have a publishing workshop scheduled, but we're also going to just channel in and experience basically as much as you can possibly experience in Ireland in that amount of time. We have a lot going on. It's a big adventure energy. So you can look up Emily, KristaLyn, Ireland Trova Trip on Google, and that'll be the easiest way to find us. But yeah, we do still have some spot there if you want to come. We'd love it if you came. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and that's August. We go in August on that one. So it's soon, which is cool. But yeah.
If your
so
Uranus Mercury is suddenly I want to take a trip.
Right? If you're yeah, exactly. If you're suddenly like, I want to go somewhere, but I don't know where to go. It's great because though we're doing this as a group, if you're solo traveling, it gives you that solo travel feel, but you're still in a group where you get to make friends. But there's still enough freedom built into all of our trips where you can still go do whatever you want at dinner or whatever. So you still have kind of a both. So it's a nice like merging of the world. So you don't feel, sometimes solo travel is like really daunting. And so that way you don't feel
Especially in groups, because there's so much rigidity that often comes with that. We avoid that on purpose. We
Yeah.
want you to experience the place you're going, not
Yeah.
to just be dragged around from event to event and schedule to schedule.
Yeah. We're not like that at all.
Mhm.
But that way you can also embrace the energy and get your own activations and the things that you need. But yeah, so if you want to come with us, you should come with us. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I like it. I'm excited.
Yeah. So what have you been reading this month? Let's do some bookend stuff.
So, okay, you guys, and I warned this in my last one. Last month, I was prolific with books. This month, I read 2 books that I waited until the end because I was like, there has to be something redeemable at this. There has to be. And then there wasn't. And it was both books that I read this month. And then the rest of my life has been spent in Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I live there now. That's where I exist.
Me too.
Yeah. So that's on my book haul kind of recap. I'm going to be including that there because it is a story. It counts. And I'm living in
That's
it.
fair.
And yeah, it's amazing. But I started the month reading A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saff, which is one I know you've read. I was really interested in the lore. I wanted the lore. I loved it. I loved the setting. I loved how complicated the behind the scenes, you could tell culture, government structure, all of those things were really well done. And even the imagery, the writing was all really well done. And they're, the demiurges, as someone who has read a lot about Gnosticism, I was just like, ooh, how are they going to play into it? They keep mentioning these little things that should have so much meaning. I can't wait until they culminate and it actually means something by the end. And then by the end, it was just all a big setup for her to go on a date, is what it felt like. By all means, if it sounds interesting to you and you really are into romance as a primary plot in a world of very good lore, definitely read it. You'll probably enjoy it. Personally, I was not as interested in the romantic plot as I was in the like, why is the world like this and what comes next thing. And I thought with the poignant moment that they were in the saga of their world's lore, I wanted more on that. But it was not there. So great lore, really well done, craft wise, but just kind of missed the mark for me a little bit.
Yeah. Fun. What else did you read?
So I'm on the cozy fiction subreddit, and they'd been talking about this one book for quite a while. Everybody's like, oh, I just read The Wizard's Butler. Now I want to read more fae books. And I'm like, oh, a fae book, The Wizard's Butler. That's cool. It's a cozy story. So I start reading it and it's boring as heck. I just find myself like that would have been interesting, but you're in the other room. That would have been interesting, but you're over here. And then like sometimes they brought him as the butler in weird ways. Like it just wasn't believable, even though it's magical realism. Then the mention of the fae that I was so excited about, because they just incorporate the fact that pixies tend to be in magical places or around magical people. And so he doesn't get to clean as much because it angered the pixies. And so they'll mention them sometimes, but they're more of like this Deus Ex Machina plot device. And I was just like, they were like a front and center draw. Why are you not actually letting them be a character? And then other things that it was like, ooh, that probably is setting up for something really cool here. So I kept getting like breadcrumbs, and then there was a meal at the end. Like it was just leftovers that somebody who was eating on their walk left, not actually a trail to go to something. There was one scene that was interesting, and they could have led up to that. They could have expanded on it. It would have been amazing, but they didn't. And so you could tell, to me, it was like this person had that one scene as inspiration and built a story around it, but they just did it schematically, I think is the word. They just did it instead of being inspired by it, instead of letting it grow and unfurl. It was just like, I like this scene. We have to have like 200 pages leading up to it, and then 20 pages after it, and then we're done. And so it was a little disappointing. That being said, if you like a cozy fiction that is, sometimes boring helps. Sometimes something that's not trying to emotionally charge you up is a thing. You might actually really like this. I know a lot of people on the subreddit did.
I mean, it sounds, and I mentioned this to you when we talked about it before, it feels like a Miyazaki film to me, which I love Miyazaki films, but they are inherently no plot, just vibes.
Yeah. It's a little too high Scorpio moon blood.
Uh-huh. Which if you're like, sometimes I'm in the mood for no plot twist vibes, you know, like sometimes that's important. So if you're in that space, I mean, that seems like a no plot just vibe sort of zone, which is cool if you need that. I really like character driven, plot driven stuff, so I have a harder time with that as well. I don't always like everything to be high stakes. Like I loved Legends and Lattes. I loved that it was low stakes and just very relaxed and there wasn't a whole lot going on, but it moved still and it was very character driven. Like I loved the people or the beings in it, you know? I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also was not particularly prolific this month. What did I read? Oh, I read two very funny, very similarly titled books with very different plot lines. So the first book was A Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England, which is one of the Brandon Sanderson secret novels. So if you are waiting to read that, don't listen to the next 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you're like really don't want to know anything about it, because I know it's one of the secret novels, skip 5 minutes ahead. Okay, even warned. I liked it. It was cute. It was definitely Brandon Sanderson hyperfixating on this very specific time period in Anglo-Saxon England. It's kind of like an isekai. So if you are familiar with anime or manga, it's where someone falls into another world, basically. Usually the category or the like catalyst event is death. That is not the case with this particular book, but it is very isekai-esque. Might as well sort of be death kind of thing. But it's really, really cool because throughout the book, you actually get to, with the main character, read and discover the Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England, which is the only possession basically he brought with him to this medieval England realm from our world. And it immediately exploded on impact and he has to go like gather all the pages and try to figure out what the heck happened to him. And it is mostly marketing material. It is a like, the book is like not particularly helpful. It is genuinely mostly like, I highly recommend listening to the audiobook narration because the Frugal Wizard's Guide's narrated by a different narrator than the rest of the story. And she does a fabulous job. And it's 100% marketing material. It's just like, in your choice wizard realm trademark, this will happen, and you know, and you, the frugal wizard registered trademark, will do this and this, and it's really cute. It's really well done. It's a Sanderson book. It is a standalone.
Really well.
Huh?
You did that really well.
Oh, thank you. It's a Sanderson book. It is a standalone. It's not part of the Cosmere. I really liked the world building. I liked a lot of the ancillary characters. I didn't like the main character at all. He drove me nuts, and I think it's because I'm not a guy. That's just what I'm gonna put it. Which is rare. Usually, like I can totally find some like kind of common ground, but I think the story will resonate a lot more with men than it would with non-binary or female presenting people, to be totally honest. There's just that kind of element to it. That being said, really interesting take on Anglo-Saxon England, really interesting take on, it's more of a sci-fi than it is a fantasy, but there's magic still involved. Different deities kind of come in and play with stuff. It's cool. So there's that one. So I read that pretty quick. I'm really looking forward to his next secret project. So I'm really hoping that comes out soon because I really want to keep going on that binge. I found that I love Sanderson. You guys know that I love Sanderson, but I have a really hard time biting off some of his big series because they're huge. So it's been really nice to be like chunking in these standalones of his. And yeah, so there's that. And then I read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. And I cannot recommend it enough. It's honestly such a cute story. This is not by Sanderson. It is by, hold on, let me look it up. It is by T. Kingfisher. And it is precious. It's so cute. It is about a 14-year-old girl. So you would think that it was written like the way it's written, which is honestly a masterful use of the craft. It is written not like any other middle grade or YA. It will absolutely appeal to middle grade YA readers for sure. It can be read by them, but it reads as if the author knows and respects them as fully grown people, which I so deeply appreciate, because me as an adult, I usually am not a big YA or middle grade fan. I struggle with them quite a bit. I did not struggle with this in the slightest. It read like she was writing for adults, but writing for, or they, I don't know if she, I assume she, but they, were writing for adults, even though they were obviously writing for the age demographic of the main character. It was just really, really well done in that way, which I loved. But basically, there's like the general premise of it, which is super cute, is in this particular fantasy world, and it's like a fantasy world that consists of a bunch of kind of city states. Some people are born with magic, but that magic doesn't always have a lot of purpose. So there are very specific magics. There's one person, that can only grow roses, and there's one person that can only make dead horses walk, and then there's one person, our main character, she's magic, but only with bread. She can only do things with bread, and it's incredibly sweet. It's a beautiful story. It's cozy, but there is still considerable stakes, and it's like a really beautiful commentary on how governments treat people in war, which is seen through the lens of a 14-year-old baker. And it's just really, really precious. So it's won a bunch of awards too for the commentary that it wove in there. And the ending is really lovely in a lot of ways, and also really like ouch in a lot of ways, which is really beautifully done. So I highly recommend it. It was really awesome. I had a great time listening to it. I laughed out loud multiple times too, because the way that it's written is really cute and really quirky. And then again, the audiobook narration was fabulous, like really, really, really well done. And I highly recommend it. So those are the two that I read. I also have been playing Tears of the Kingdom constantly, so that's been lovely.
That's a lifestyle at this point. There's so much.
It's huge. It's huge, and I am woefully not as creative with this building element as so many people out there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I made a cart, and someone's like, I made a mech that farms fish for me, and I'm like, the fuck, you did what?
Exactly. There are times where I play it and then I'll run into like the block of something, and I'm like, oh, this is not how I think, and I don't have my resources around to like do something else. And so it's a co-op with Dan. I'm just like, how would you do this? And then we get to like brain each other, and it's really fun. I was flying back from Seattle, Washington yesterday, so I had like this 5-hour flight, and of course I was playing Tears of the Kingdom the whole time. And it was funny, I would go to the bathroom in the back of the plane, walk back towards the front, and there's like 4 of us playing Tears of the Kingdom on the plane. It's like, I see you all. It's great. But I have 2 shrines, and I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna get Dan to help me on this, because I know I did the one right. I swear I did one right, but I just couldn't get the physics to agree with me on it.
Get it.
Physics hate
I was trying to build this thing to like launch me up to the top of this cliff to fight one of the Yuga clan members last night, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna climb. And I drank like 4 different like stamina potions to make sure I got to the top, but I couldn't get there. So I was just like, I don't care, I'm climbing. I don't care. So that's been super fun. I've been loving that. That's been great. I've also been watching the Queen Charlotte, which is so good too. I only have 2 episodes left, but I will say, like, on a craft standpoint, like, I love Bridgerton anyway. It's such a beautiful escape. Also, I got this mug entirely disconnected, but it's like a perfect Bridgerton mug, which was not intentional. But anyway, it has a B and it says Queen on it. But but usually they're so romance heavy, which is really fun. They do it in a really great way. But this particular season, at first I was like, how are they going to do this? And I really love the way they're using the romance to inspire and help people see the good in others, which I think is cool. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I'm also, as a recommendation, if we're talking about shows, Ted Lasso's final season is completing right now. Ted Lasso, I am not a sports person, but I will watch Ted Lasso over and over and over and over and over and over again for the rest of my life for how well done it is. And they started by saying, we are going to have 3 seasons. And that is that. And I cannot tell you what a masterpiece it has been. I don't care about soccer/football. I care about everything in this show.
That's awesome.
It's like, it really tackles all the problems in our world, but particularly toxic masculinity and like how not to. And it's very applicably inspirational, which I like.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I have not seen it all. I don't have Apple TV, so
we should, one of these times we actually get to hang out, we will just binge it.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm all about binging.
like their Christmas episode
Oh.
is now a yearly thing for me because it's so adorable.
Oh,
It is cozy
okay.
fiction. Is basically
I love that.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of reading Stephen Fry's Mythos because again we're
Yes.
going to Greece. And I was a Hellenic polytheist for a while, so I've like very familiar with most Greek myths. Like I've read very extensively on them in multiple different books, and the great Zeus and all his children like style of myth telling. And Stephen
Mhm.
Fry just comes in and is like, let's chat about this. And like that's the energy of the whole book. And I love it so much. So thank you for reading it first and giving me that recommendation. And it's been like a really pleasant like mythology catch up before we go to Greece.
I would
It's
recommend that
cute.
to literally everybody.
It's just he's hilarious. The way he writes is so funny.
Mhm.
And he's obviously has a passion for etymology because he
Mhm.
connects names to like, which I just really appreciate because like you don't see that necessarily, but how much the Greek gods have influenced our language is so much.
Yeah.
And so he will go through and be like, this is this person's name, and this is where we get this word, and this word, and this word, and this, and you're like,
And how the myth plays
oh.
into the definition and stuff too. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then he'll comment on like how it was back then and how history might tell you it was, but how it actually was, like they were best friends kind of thing.
Yeah. He was talking about, I was just got through the part with Athena, and he was like, because of this, and also this, and also this, and also this, some suggest she was probably the patron deity of women loving women. Okay, moving on.
And if
But
you
it
know
was really
about
cute.
Stephen Fry, like he would know.
Yeah. So anyway, really cute. I recommend that too, but I'm kind of catching up on that as well. Well, you guys, next week, we are going to have a replay episode that is still really important for right now, and we kind of chose it very intentionally. So we hope you still really listen to it. As if you haven't been a longtime fan, you probably haven't heard it. This was one of our earlier interviews. But even if you have been a longtime fan, it's a refresher on purpose to pay attention to with the culture of right now.
And if you've listened to it before, listen to it again and see how your perception when you first listened to it has grown or changed now that it's become even more of a relevant topic. Because it's frustrating, but also helps us to really center and ground in the reality of what's going on. How do we at what point do our minds take in, yes, this is something we need to take action on? That's a process that has to click, and it's frustrating sometimes. And we're all a part of that. Do not feel bad about that. But it is a study on that.
So we are replaying that for you next week, just simply because we cannot commit to recording and when we're in Greece. So, and it's a really pertinent topic. So just pay attention. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it, of course. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our patrons. We appreciate you. And we are going to get like the bonus video posted up there and some poll stuff posted up there so that when we get back, you'll be all set to let us know what you'd like us to talk about for our next episode.
Yeah. By the time this episode actually airs, the bonus video will be available. So hope you guys enjoy it.
Yes. And we hope that you have a wonderful weekend with this full moon Uranus energy, and that you
go make some magic.
That one was like short. I liked it.